There is a question that cuts through the noise of modern life, like a surgeon's scalpel. It is a question that, once heard, you can never unhear. It forces you to confront the very foundation upon which you have built your life, your career, your sense of self. It was posed not in a philosophy classroom or a monastery, but by a man from Omaha, Nebraska, who built one of the world's greatest fortunes by thinking differently than everyone else. Warren Buffett, the oracle of value investing, once asked a group of students a simple, devastating question. Would you rather be the world's greatest lover, but have everyone think you're the world's worst lover? Or would you rather be the world's worst lover, but have everyone think you're the world's greatest? Think about it for a moment. Your answer reveals your internal operating system. It tells you whether you are living your life according to what Buffett calls the inner scorecard or the outer scorecard. The outer scorecard is how the world sees you. It's your job title, your follower count, your bank account balance, the car you drive, the awards on your wall. It is the roar of the crowd, the applause, the likes, the shares, the external validation that we are taught from birth to crave. The inner scorecard is different. It is your own private, unshakable judgment of yourself. It is the person you see in the mirror when no one else is looking. It's your character, your integrity, your effort, your adherence to your own principles. It is the quiet voice of authenticity that asks not, "What will they think?" but, "Is this who I want to be?" For most of history, the outer scorecard had a limited reach. Your reputation was confined to your village, your town, your professional circle. But today, we live in the age of the universal outer scorecard. Social media has handed every single one of us a megaphone and a scoreboard, turning life into a relentless 24/7 popularity contest. We are curating our lives for public consumption, filtering our reality, and measuring our self-worth in the most superficial metrics imaginable. This addiction to the outer scorecard is the source of a tremendous amount of modern anxiety, mediocrity, and misery. It is the fast path to a life of chasing trends, pleasing others, and waking up at 50, wondering who you even are. The antidote to this poison is Buffett's simple, profound philosophy. The decision to live by your inner scorecard is the single most important choice you can make for your long-term success, your financial freedom, and your personal fulfillment. It is the ultimate act of rebellion in a world that wants to tell you who to be. This is not just a piece of feel-good life advice. It is a strategic mental model, a weapon for superior decision-making in business, in investing, and in life. It is the foundational principle behind a CEO mindset, capable of building empires and living a life of genuine happiness. Over the course of this journey, we are going to deconstruct this powerful philosophy into its core components. We will explore the psychological traps that keep 99% of people chained to the outer scorecard, and we will build a practical blueprint for how you can cultivate, strengthen, and live by your own internal compass. This is the final promise. A promise that by understanding this one idea, you can reclaim your focus, your autonomy, and your authenticity in a world designed to steal them from you. We begin by laying the foundation, by understanding what it truly means to define and build your own inner scorecard, an act of personal creation that serves as the bedrock for a life of purpose and integrity. To truly grasp the power of the inner scorecard, we must look to the man who gave it to Warren Buffett. Long before Warren was the Oracle of Omaha, he was the son of Howard Homan Buffett, a stockbroker and four-term congressman from Nebraska. Howard was a man forged in the crucible of the Great Depression, a man for whom principle was not a matter of convenience but the very essence of his being. And it was through watching his father navigate the treacherous waters of politics that Warren received his first and most important lesson in authenticity. In 1942, Howard Buffett was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. He was a staunch Republican, but more than that, he was a fierce individualist, a believer in sound money and limited government, with a deeply ingrained skepticism of institutional power. He arrived in Washington, D.C. as a man with an unshakable inner scorecard. He wasn't there to win a popularity contest or climb the political ladder. He was there to vote his conscience, to speak the truth as he saw it, regardless of the consequences. And the consequences came swiftly. One of his most defining moments came with the Truman Doctrine in 1947. President Truman was asking Congress for $400 million in aid to Greece and Turkey to contain the spread of communism. On the surface, it was a test of patriotism. The post-war consensus was forming, the Cold War was beginning, and the pressure to present a united front against the Soviet Union was immense. The Outer Scorecard for every congressman screamed, "Vote yes." To vote no is to be soft on communism, to be un-American. The party whips were out in full force, the newspapers were beating the drums of war, and the public was swept up in the fear of the moment. But Howard Buffett looked at the bill and saw something else. He saw a massive expansion of government power, a commitment that would entangle the United States in foreign conflicts indefinitely, and a betrayal of the non-interventionist principles he held dear. His inner scorecard, his personal constitution, told him it was wrong. So he did the unthinkable. He stood on the floor of the House and voted no. He was one of only a small handful to do so. The backlash was immediate. He was labeled an isolationist, naive, even a traitor by some. His political career was instantly jeopardized. He had willingly chosen to be, in the eyes of the world's worst lover of American foreign policy, because he knew in his own heart that he was being true to his principles. Young Warren Buffett watched all of this unfold. He saw his father come home, not defeated, but serene. He saw a man who slept soundly at night, not because he was popular, but because he was proud of his own conduct. He learned that the applause of the crowd is fleeting and fickle, but self-respect is permanent. Howard once told Warren, "It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it." But what Warren saw was the corollary. A reputation built on an inner scorecard of integrity is nearly indestructible because it isn't dependent on the whims of others. This foundational anecdote isn't just a heartwarming family story. It's the genetic code of Warren Buffett's entire philosophy. It's why he was able to make lonely, contrarian investments. It's why he built a decentralized company like Berkshire Hathaway, trusting his managers to operate with integrity. And it's why he lives in a modest house in Omaha, completely indifferent to the outer scorecard of billionaire lifestyles. He learned from his father that the only approval that matters is your own. The deep psychological principle at play here, the engine that separates Howard Buffett from the political chameleon, is known as locus of control. Developed by psychologist Julian B. Rotter in the 1950s, this concept describes the degree to which people believe they have control over the outcomes of events in their lives. It's a spectrum. On one end you have an asterisk internal locus of control. People with a strong internal locus believe that their own actions, choices, and efforts are the primary drivers of their success or failure. They are the captains of their own ships. When they succeed, they attribute it to their hard work and good decisions. When they fail, they take responsibility and look for what they can do differently next time. This mindset is the very definition of the inner scorecard. It is a belief system rooted in personal agency and accountability. On the other end of the spectrum is an asterisk external locus of control. People with this mindset believe that their lives are dictated by outside forces, luck, fate, chance, powerful institutions, or the whims of other people. They are passengers on a ship, being tossed by the waves. When they succeed, they often feel it was a lucky break. When they fail, they are quick to blame the unfair system, a bad boss, or a poor economy. This is the mindset of the outer scorecard. It outsources responsibility for your life and your happiness to the world around you. Your self-esteem is not generated from within. It is borrowed from the approval of others. Think about the implications. Someone with an internal locus of control, a Howard Buffett, sees a difficult political vote as a test of their principles. Their decision-making process is internal. What do I believe is right? Someone with an external locus of control sees the same vote as a threat to their status. Their decision-making process is external. What will the party leaders think? What will the polls say? How can I avoid criticism? The modern world, and social media in particular, is a factory for producing an external locus of control. Every like, every share, every comment is a small, addictive hit of external validation. It trains our brains to constantly ask, what will they think of this? We post a picture and immediately check for the response. We share an opinion and brace for the reaction. We are conditioning ourselves, click by click, to live by the outer scorecard. The psychology of success is inextricably linked to fostering an internal locus of control. Studies have shown that people with a strong internal locus are more likely to be academically successful, achieve their goals, cope better with stress, and report higher levels of happiness and fulfillment. They are more resilient in the face of setbacks because they don't see failure as a final judgment from the universe. They see it as a data point, an opportunity to learn and adjust their strategy. They are in essence more psychologically robust. Cultivating an inner scorecard is the act of consciously shifting your locus of control from external to internal. It's a declaration of psychological independence. It's the decision to stop letting the chaotic, often irrational opinions of the world dictate your sense of worth, and start building that worth from the inside out, based on your character, your effort, and your own unwavering standards. So how do we move from understanding this philosophy to actually living it? How do we forge an inner scorecard in a world that relentlessly pushes us toward the outer? The answer lies in a practical, applied mental model, a blueprint we can call the personal constitution. This is a deliberate, structured process for defining your values and turning them into the operating system for your life. Step 1 is value identification. You cannot live by your principles if you don't know what they are. This requires more than just a passing thought. It requires deep introspection. Take out a journal and set aside at least an hour of uninterrupted time. The exercise is to brainstorm a list of every value you hold dear. Think about words like honesty, curiosity, compassion, discipline, courage, creativity, loyalty. Don't censor yourself. Write down dozens. Now, the hard part. Circle your top 5. This forced ranking is crucial. When values conflict, and they always do, you need to know what your ultimate priorities are. These 5 values are the foundational pillars of your personal constitution. Step 2 is principle formulation. A value like honesty is abstract. A principle is a rule for behavior. Your task is to translate each of your 5 core values into a concrete, actionable principle. For example, if your value is honesty, your principle might be, I will never say something about a person that I would not be willing to say to their face. If your value is discipline, your principle could be, I will do the hardest task on my to-do list first each morning. These principles are not vague aspirations, they are clear, binary commitments. At the end of the day, you either lived by them or you didn't. They become the yardstick for your inner scorecard. Step 3 is the eulogy test. This is a powerful and admittedly morbid thought experiment that creates profound clarity. Imagine you are at your own funeral. What would you want your closest friends, your family, your colleagues to say about you? Write it down, not the accomplishments. Not, he was a vice president or she made $1 million. Write down the character traits. She was unfailingly kind. He was a man of his word. She was endlessly curious and never stopped learning. The person described in that eulogy is the ideal version of you, the person your inner scorecard is striving to become. The gap between who you are now and the person in that eulogy is your roadmap for personal development. Step 4 is the daily audit. A constitution is useless if it's not consulted. At the end of each day, take just 2 minutes to reflect. Ask yourself 2 questions. Did my actions today align with my personal constitution? And what could I do better tomorrow? This isn't about self-flagellation, it's about course correction. It's a simple, private act of accountability that strengthens your internal locus of control. It trains you to seek your own approval first. This entire process, identifying values, formulating principles, envisioning your ideal self, and conducting daily audits, is the practical work of building your authenticity and self-esteem. It moves the inner scorecard from a nice idea to the central organizing principle of your existence. It is the leadership and entrepreneurship of the self, the foundational act of a life lived with purpose. To fully appreciate the strength and clarity of this path, we must examine its opposite. We must walk the path of the 99%, the path of the outer scorecard, which can be described as living the chameleon life. The chameleon is a master of adaptation. It changes its color to blend in with its environment, to avoid predators, and to ambush prey. In the natural world, this is a brilliant survival strategy. In human life, it is a recipe for a hollow existence. The person living the chameleon life has no fixed set of internal principles. Their values are situational. Their personality is a mirror, reflecting back whatever the most powerful person in the room wants to see. In a corporate setting, this is the sycophant, the employee who tailors every opinion to the boss's known preferences. They are quick to agree, slow to dissent, and their primary goal is not to produce the best work, but to be perceived in the most favorable light. They climb the ladder, for a time, but they are never trusted. Their colleagues know that their loyalty is to the org chart, not to the truth or the team. In the world of entrepreneurship, this is the trend chaser. One year they are a crypto expert, the next they are an AI guru, the year after they are launching a sustainable SaaS company. Their business identity is dictated by whatever is getting the most venture capital funding and media attention. They lack the deep conviction and domain expertise that comes from pursuing a genuine passion. They build businesses that are wide but shallow, and when the trend inevitably fades, they are left with nothing of lasting value. On a personal level, the chameleon life is exhausting. It requires constant monitoring of the social environment, a relentless calculation of what to say, how to act, and who to impress. It is a life lived on performance, not presence. The chameleon is so busy changing colors that they forget what their natural color even is. This leads to a profound sense of inner emptiness. Because their self-worth is entirely outsourced, they are fragile, dependent on a constant stream of external validation. A negative comment can ruin their day. A lack of likes can trigger a crisis of confidence. They have no internal anchor in the storm of public opinion. The ultimate tragedy of the chameleon life is that in the desperate attempt to be liked by everyone, the chameleon ends up respecting no one, least of all themselves. They have traded the granite of authenticity for the sand of popularity, and when the winds of fortune change, their entire sense of self blows away. It is a life of quiet desperation, masked by a curated feed of apparent success, a perfect illustration of the misery born from a slavish devotion to the outer scorecard. The distinction between these two paths is not merely philosophical, it has a direct, measurable, and massive financial connection. Living by an inner scorecard of authenticity and integrity is one of the most powerful, long-term financial strategies you can adopt. Think of it in terms of brand equity. A company that has a clear, authentic mission and lives by it consistently builds a powerful brand. Consider a company like Patagonia. Its inner scorecard is built around environmentalism and quality. They famously ran an ad that said, "Don't buy this jacket," encouraging people to consume less. This seems like a terrible business decision from a short-term outer scorecard perspective. But for their target customer, it was a profound signal of authenticity. It built a level of trust and loyalty that other apparel companies can only dream of. That trust allows them to command premium prices, fosters a tribe of loyal customers who act as brand evangelists, and attracts top-tier employees who want to work for a company with a purpose. This is the financial power of an inner scorecard. Now contrast this with a company that gets caught greenwashing, pretending to be environmentally friendly to appeal to the outer scorecard of public opinion, while their internal practices are polluting. When the truth comes out, the damage to their brand is catastrophic. customers feel betrayed, trust evaporates, and sales plummet. The short-term gain from the deception is dwarfed by the long-term financial destruction. The same principle applies to individuals. Your reputation is your personal brand equity. A leader known for their integrity, someone whose yes means yes and whose no means no, attracts the best talent. An entrepreneur with a reputation for fairness and quality builds a loyal customer base and can forge long-term partnerships. This character-based advantage reduces what we can call reputation risk. When you live by an inner scorecard, your actions are consistent and predictable. People know who you are and what you stand for. This builds trust, and trust is the ultimate lubricant of commerce. It speeds up negotiations, it allows for more favorable terms, and it creates opportunities that are simply not available to the chameleon. The person with a reputation for integrity gets the benefit of the doubt in a crisis. The chameleon is cut loose at the first sign of trouble. Ultimately, the financial connection is this. The outer scorecard chases short-term profits and status, often at the expense of trust. The inner scorecard builds long-term trust, which is the foundation of all sustainable value, both financial and personal. It's the difference between building a business on a foundation of rock versus a foundation of sand. One withstands the tests of time, the other washes away in the first storm. The first step is to build that foundation of authenticity, but the modern world is not a quiet place for construction. It is a hurricane of opinions, a cacophony of experts, a relentless fire hose of information designed to distract you, frighten you, and pull you into the vortex of the crowd. Therefore, the second great pillar of this philosophy is an act of defiance, the conscious and total rejection of the outer scorecard. It is not enough to know what you believe. You must actively defend your mind against the noise that seeks to drown out your own inner voice. This requires a level of discipline and discernment that most people are unwilling to cultivate. One of the most telling anecdotes from Buffett's career that illustrates this principle is not one of his celebrated victories, but a long, painful defeat, the story of Berkshire Hathaway's original textile mills. In 1965, Buffett took control of Berkshire Hathaway, a struggling textile manufacturing company in New Bedford, Massachusetts. From a purely analytical standpoint, from the cold, hard numbers on the page, he knew the business was doomed. The entire American textile industry was in a terminal decline, facing overwhelming competition from low-wage countries. His inner scorecard, the rational calculator of business value, told him the clear, logical path was to take the capital trapped in this dying enterprise and redeploy it into better businesses. But the outer scorecard screamed the opposite. Berkshire Hathaway was the largest employer in New Bedford. It was the heart of the community. Generations of families had worked in those mills. Closing them down would devastate the town, put thousands of people out of work, and earn Buffett the title of a ruthless, heartless corporate raider. The local newspapers, the unions, the politicians, every external voice pleaded with him to keep the mills running. For years, Buffett tried to defy the inevitable. He invested more money, trying to make the business more competitive. He fought a losing battle against the powerful economic tides. He was, in a way, listening to the outer scorecard. He was making decisions based on public opinion and the emotional weight of the community's expectations. He later called this his biggest investment mistake, not because he lost money, but because he allowed the noise of the crowd to cloud his rational judgment for far too long. The decision to finally close the last textile mill in 1985 was agonizing. He knew the human cost, but it was also an act of liberation. It was the moment he fully committed to his inner scorecard's primary directive: to be a steward of his investors' capital and allocate it in the most rational way possible, free from emotion and external pressure. He learned that while you must be decent and fair in how you execute a decision, the decision itself must be based on the cold, hard facts of reality, not the warm, fuzzy desires of the crowd. This painful lesson forged his resolve. It taught him that to be a successful investor and leader, You must have the discipline to tune out the noise, no matter how loud or emotionally compelling it is, and listen to the quiet, persistent voice of reason that resides within. The psychological force that made Buffett's decision so difficult is one of the most powerful biases hardwired into the human brain, the principle of social proof, also known as herd mentality. Our brains did not evolve for navigating complex global financial markets. They evolved for surviving on the African savanna. For our ancestors, straying from the tribe was a death sentence. If everyone in your clan suddenly started running, the correct survival instinct was not to stop and analyze the situation. It was to run first and ask questions later. The person who saw the crowd running and thought, "I wonder what they're running from, perhaps I should gather more data," was eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. The person who unthinkingly followed the herd survived to pass on their genes. We are the direct descendants of the conformists. This ancient wiring manifests today as social proof. When we are uncertain about what to do, we look to others for cues. We assume that if a lot of people are doing something, it must be the right thing to do. This is the cognitive mechanism that drives fashion trends, viral videos, and, most dangerously, financial bubbles and panics. The famous Asch conformity experiments of the 1950s demonstrated this with chilling clarity. In these studies, a subject was placed in a room with a group of actors and asked to perform a simple visual perception test. The group was shown a line and then asked to pick the line of the same length from a set of 3 options. The answer was always obvious. But then, the actors, one by one, would all give the same, clearly incorrect answer. By the time it was the subject's turn to speak, an astonishing 75% of them conformed to the group's wrong answer at least once, even though it directly contradicted the evidence of their own eyes. They chose the outer scorecard of group consensus over the inner scorecard of their own perception. This is precisely what happens in a stock market bubble. A few people start making money on a new tech stock. Others see this and jump in, not because they've analyzed the business, but because they see their neighbors getting rich. The rising price becomes its own justification, social proof that it's a good investment. The media amplifies the story, creating a feedback loop of herd behavior. People abandon their own judgment, their own inner scorecard of value, and surrender to the madness of the crowd. They are terrified of being left behind. The reverse happens in a crash. Panic becomes the social proof. Everyone is selling, so the instinct is to sell too, to follow the herd off the cliff. Rejecting the outer scorecard is a psychologically demanding act because it means fighting against millions of years of evolutionary programming. It requires you to be the person in the Asch experiment who, despite the immense social pressure, stands up and speaks the truth. No, the answer is B. It requires you to trust your own analysis when the entire world is telling you you're a fool. This is not a natural human tendency. It is a learned skill, a discipline of mindset that must be intentionally cultivated. To systematically fight this deep-seated herd instinct, you need a practical mental model, a toolkit for clear thinking. Let's call it the information diet. Just as your physical health is a product of the food you consume, your mental clarity is a product of the information you allow into your mind. A junk food diet leads to a weak body. A junk information diet leads to weak thinking. Step 1 of the information diet is the noise audit. For 1 full week, carry a notebook or use an app to track every significant piece of information you consume. This includes the news you watch, the websites you read, the social media feeds you scroll through, the podcasts you listen to, and even the opinions you hear from colleagues around the water cooler. At the end of each day, categorize each item as either signal or noise. Signal is timeless, factual information that helps you make better decisions. Think of a company's annual report, a well-researched biography, or a foundational text on a subject you want to master. Noise is fleeting, speculative, emotional, and often designed to provoke a reaction rather than inform. This includes most breaking news headlines, stock market predictions, political commentary, and social media outrage. After a week, you will be shocked at the ratio. Most of us are consuming a diet that is 95% noise and 5% signal. Step 2 is to curate your inputs. Now that you know where the noise is coming from, you must be ruthless in cutting it out. Unfollow people on social media who specialize in outrage. Delete the news apps from your phone that send you breathless breaking notifications every 10 minutes. Cancel the cable TV package. This isn't about becoming ignorant. It's about being intentional. Replace the noise with signal. Instead of watching an hour of cable news punditry, spend that hour reading a chapter of a book on economic history. Instead of scrolling through a Twitter feed of market gossip, read the quarterly letters from intelligent investors like Buffett or Howard Marks. You are shifting from a passive consumer of low-quality information to an active seeker of high-quality knowledge. Step 3 is to create a thinking sanctuary. High-quality thinking cannot happen in a state of constant distraction. You must schedule time in your calendar for deliberate, uninterrupted thought. This means no phone, no email, no internet. It might be 30 minutes in the morning or an hour in the evening. This is the time when your inner scorecard gets to speak without being shouted down by the rest of the world. It's where you can connect ideas, think about long-term problems, and reflect on your personal constitution. Buffett famously has a nearly empty calendar. He spends the majority of his day just sitting in his office and reading and thinking. He is protecting his mind from noise so he can identify the signal. Step 4 is to develop an opinion quarantine. When you encounter a powerful, popular opinion, a hot stock everyone is buying, a business strategy everyone is adopting, your herd instinct will be to accept it immediately. Instead, place that opinion in a mental quarantine. For 24 to 48 hours, you are not allowed to agree with it. Your sole task is to seek out the most intelligent counter-argument you can find. This practice forces you to break the spell of social proof. It trains you to think in probabilities, not in certainties, and to respect the complexity of reality. By consciously managing your information diet, you are building a mental fortress that protects your inner scorecard from the corrosive influence of the crowd. The failure to build this fortress leads to what can be called the market-driven life. This is the path of the 99%, a life dictated not by an internal compass, but by the fluctuating prices on a screen and the shifting winds of popular opinion. The person living the market-driven life wakes up and immediately checks their stock portfolio or their crypto wallet. Their mood for the entire day is set by whether the numbers are green or red. Their self-worth is directly tied to their net worth on a minute-by-minute basis. They are not an investor. They are a gambler, riding a roller coaster of greed and fear. Their decisions are purely reactive. They hear a tip from a friend or see a stock soaring on the news, and they buy, terrified of missing out. Then, when the market turns and the headlines are filled with doom, they sell in a panic, locking in their losses. They are perpetually buying high and selling low, the exact opposite of a rational strategy. This frantic activity extends beyond their finances. Their career choices are market-driven. They don't ask, what am I passionate about? What skills do I want to build over a lifetime? Instead, they ask, what's the hottest job market right now? They jump from industry to industry, chasing the highest salary or the most prestigious title, without ever building deep mastery in anything. Their life is a series of short-term trades, lacking any long-term, compounding strategy. They are a leaf in the wind, constantly buffeted by the latest economic trend or social fad. The psychological toll of the market-driven life is immense. It is a state of perpetual anxiety, of being constantly plugged into the noise machine. There is no peace, no sense of control, only the relentless, exhausting cycle of reacting to external stimuli. This person is the ultimate embodiment of the outer scorecard. Their value as a human being is not defined by their character or their effort, but by the last tick of the stock market, the latest social media metric, or the current consensus of the crowd. It's a hollow, fragile, and ultimately unfulfilling way to live, a direct consequence of failing to reject the noise and listen to oneself. The financial consequences of this failure are brutal and quantifiable. Living by the outer scorecard, by the noise of the market, is the single greatest destroyer of wealth for the average individual. Every year, financial services companies like Dalbar publish a study called Quantitative Analysis of Investor Behavior. Year after year, the results are the same, and they are devastating. The study compares the returns of the average equity mutual fund investor to the returns of the S&P 500 index itself. Over long periods like 20 or 30 years, the average investor massively underperforms the market. For instance, in a period where the market might return an average of 10% per year, the average investor might only earn 5% or 6%. Why? The gap is not due to bad funds, it's due to bad behavior. The gap is the precise financial cost of listening to the outer scorecard. The average investor, driven by the herd mentality, consistently pulls their money out of the market after it has fallen, selling low, and rushes to put money back in after it has already run up, buying high. They are whipsawed by their emotions, which are in turn manipulated by the sensationalist financial media. The data proves it. The cost of listening to the noise, of trying to time the market based on fear and greed, amounts to nearly half of your potential long-term returns. Let's make that concrete. If you invest $100,000 and earn 10% for 30 years, you end up with nearly $1.75 million. If you earn 6%, a 4% gap due to bad behavior, you end up with just under $575,000. The price of living by the outer scorecard, in this example, is over $1 million. It is the direct financial transfer of wealth from those who are reactive and follow the herd to those who are patient, disciplined, and live by their inner scorecard. Buffett's famous advice to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful is the perfect encapsulation of this principle. It is an instruction to ignore the outer scorecard of market sentiment and act based on your inner scorecard of business value. By simply buying a low-cost index fund and ignoring it, by refusing to listen to the noise, the average person could dramatically improve their financial outcome. The financial connection is crystal clear. Rejecting the noise of the crowd is not just a path to peace of mind, it is a direct and powerful strategy for building and preserving wealth. Once you have established your inner scorecard and built the discipline to tune out the noise of the crowd, you arrive at the crucial moment of action. A philosophy is useless if it doesn't translate into behavior. The third pillar of this mental model is the courage of conviction, the ability to make bold, often contrarian decisions based on your own analysis and principles, even when, especially when, the entire world thinks you are crazy. This is where the inner scorecard moves from a defensive tool to an offensive weapon, allowing you to seize opportunities that are invisible to those blinded by the consensus of the outer scorecard. The single greatest example of this in Warren Buffett's career, the story that cemented his legend, is the American Express salad oil scandal of 1963. The setup was straight out of a Hollywood movie. A company in New Jersey called Allied Crude Vegetable Oil, run by a charismatic fraudster named Tino DeAngelis, was a major customer of American Express's warehousing division. Allied borrowed massive amounts of money, using its inventory of salad oil as collateral. The receipts for this inventory were issued by American Express, a stamp of trust that banks relied on. But Tino had a secret. His giant storage tanks were mostly filled with seawater, with only a thin layer of salad oil floating on top. It was one of the most audacious frauds in corporate history. When the fraud was discovered in November 1963, all hell broke loose. Allied Crude went bankrupt, and its lenders, holding worthless American Express receipts, faced colossal losses. Wall Street panicked. The consensus view, the outer scorecard, was that American Express would be on the hook for all of it. The very survival of the company was in question. The stock, which had been trading at $60, plummeted to $35 in a matter of weeks. The air was thick with fear. Analysts downgraded the stock. Pundits predicted bankruptcy. The herd was stampeding for the exits. This was a moment of maximum noise and maximum fear. But Warren Buffett, then a young, relatively unknown fund manager in Omaha, did something different. He refused to listen to the panic. he activated his inner scorecard. His first thought was not, "What is the market saying?" but "What are the fundamental facts?" He knew that the market was fixated on one piece of the puzzle, the potential liability from the warehousing division. But he also knew that American Express had two other massive, powerful businesses, its charge card and its traveler's checks. The real question, the contrarian question, was whether the scandal had damaged the core value of the American Express brand in the minds of consumers. So he did what he always does. He did his own research. He didn't read Wall Street reports. He went out into the real world. He visited restaurants and watched to see if people were still proudly using their Amex cards. They were. He talked to bank tellers and asked if customers were still buying American Express travelers' checks. They were. He even talked to competitors to gauge their perception. His on-the-ground investigation revealed a crucial insight. The public and the business community saw the salad oil scandal as a problem for the warehousing division, a small part of the company, not as a reflection on the integrity of the iconic American Express brand. The brand, the true source of the company's value, was intact. Armed with this insight from his own inner scorecard analysis, he made the boldest decision of his young career. He invested a staggering 40% of his partnership's capital, 40%, into American Express stock. He was betting the farm on his contrarian conviction. Within a few years, the market came to its senses. The company settled the liabilities for a manageable amount, and the core businesses continued to grow spectacularly. The stocks soared, and Buffett's partnerships made a fortune. The salad oil scandal became the ultimate case study in the power of independent thought. It demonstrated that the greatest financial opportunities are often found in the wreckage of bad news, at the point of maximum pessimism, where the gap between the outer scorecard of perception and the inner scorecard of reality is at its widest. The psychological principle that Buffett had to overcome to make this legendary investment is one of the most insidious and powerful cognitive biases, confirmation bias. The human brain is not a dispassionate logic processor. It is a confirmation machine. Once we form an opinion or a belief, we are far more likely to notice, seek out, and remember information that confirms that belief. At the same time, we tend to ignore, dismiss, or forget information that contradicts it. It feels good to be right, and our brains work overtime to protect that feeling. In the salad oil scandal, the initial belief that formed in the market was American Express is in deep trouble. Confirmation bias then kicked in with a vengeance. Every negative newspaper headline, every pessimistic analyst report, every tick down in the stock price was seen as further proof that the initial belief was correct. The crowd was trapped in a self-reinforcing echo chamber of fear. To break out of this trap requires immense intellectual honesty. It requires you to actively fight your own brain's natural tendencies. This is what Buffett did. He did not ask, "What are the reasons this stock is going to zero?" He deliberately inverted the question. He asked, "What if everyone is wrong? What would have to be true for this to be a fantastic investment?" This simple act of inversion is a powerful antidote to confirmation bias. It forces you to seek out disconfirming evidence. Another related bias at play was the availability heuristic. This is our tendency to overestimate the importance of information that is easily available to us, especially if it's recent, vivid, and emotional. The story of the massive salad oil swindle was dramatic, headline-grabbing news. It was readily available and emotionally charged. This vivid story completely overshadowed the more boring, less available, but far more important data point: the millions of mundane, successful transactions happening every day with Amex cards and travelers' checks. The crowd based their decision on the spectacular, available story. Buffett based his decision on the tedious, hidden data. Having the courage of your conviction, therefore, is not about being stubborn or arrogant. It's about having a disciplined process to override your own cognitive biases. It's about having the humility to know that your first impression might be wrong and the diligence to actively try to prove it wrong. True conviction is not born from blind faith. It is forged in the fire of skepticism, particularly skepticism about your own beliefs. To operationalize this kind of contrarian thinking, we can use a powerful mental model championed by Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, the inversion method. Munger famously said, "All I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there." It's a joke, but it contains a profound insight. Instead of always thinking forward about how to achieve success, it is often more effective to think backward and identify all the ways you could fail, and then assiduously avoid them. Let's apply this blueprint to a major decision, like making an investment or starting a new business venture. Step 1 is to state the goal clearly. For example, I want this investment in Company X to be highly successful over the next 10 years. This is the standard forward-thinking approach. Step 2 is to invert it. Now, you flip the problem on its head. You ask, in what ways could I absolutely guarantee that this investment is a complete disaster? Your job is to brainstorm a comprehensive list of every possible failure point. For instance, the company could have a weak balance sheet and go bankrupt in a recession. Its main product could be rendered obsolete by a new technology. The management team could be dishonest and cook the books. I could be overpaying for the stock, ensuring a low return even if the business does well. The company's competitive advantage might be weaker than I think. You are actively trying to destroy your own investment thesis. Step 3 is to create a system to avoid the failure points. Your list of potential disasters now becomes your investment checklist. Your research process is no longer a search for reasons to be optimistic, which invites confirmation bias. It is a systematic, paranoid process of checking for and avoiding all the traps you've identified. Does the company have too much debt? Check the balance sheet. Is management trustworthy? Read the last 10 years of their shareholder letters and see if they were candid about their mistakes. Is the price too high? Do a rigorous valuation based on conservative assumptions. You only proceed with the investment if you cannot find a compelling reason to kill the idea. Step 4 is to write a pre-mortem. This is a powerful technique developed by psychologist Gary Klein. Imagine it is 1 year in the future, and your decision has failed spectacularly. Write a detailed one-page story of exactly what went wrong. Our investment in Company X was a disaster because a key patent expired, and we failed to account for the new competition that flooded the market. This exercise of imagining failure in advance often surfaces risks that your optimistic, forward-looking brain would have otherwise glossed over. By consistently applying the inversion method and the pre-mortem, you are changing your entire decision-making framework. You are shifting from a mindset of "how can I make this work?" to "how can I avoid screwing this up?" This builds true, robust conviction. When you finally do make a decision, it's not because you have a vague, optimistic feeling. It's because you have rigorously tried to kill the idea from every possible angle and failed. That is a conviction worth betting on. The opposite of this courageous, conviction-driven approach is the path of the 99%, management by committee, or analysis by paralysis. This is the dominant mode of decision-making in most large organizations, and for most individuals who are terrified of the outer scorecard. The core fear here is not the fear of being wrong. It is the fear of being seen as wrong. It is the fear of being the one person to blame if something goes awry. To mitigate this career risk, the individual or the corporation creates a process designed not to produce the best outcome, but to diffuse responsibility. Ideas are vetted by endless committees. Every stakeholder has to weigh in. The process is designed to seek consensus at every step. What is the result? Bold, innovative, or contrarian ideas, the American Express-type opportunities, are almost always killed early in the process. Why? Because by their very nature they are non-consensus, they are not obvious. They carry a higher degree of uncertainty and career risk for the people who champion them. A committee will rarely, if ever, approve investing 40% of the company's capital in a scandal-plagued stock. The safe decision is always to do what everyone else is doing, or to do nothing at all. This leads to watered-down, mediocre strategies. The final product of a committee is often a compromise that pleases everyone in the room but excites no one in the marketplace. The organization becomes slow, bureaucratic, and incapable of seizing fleeting opportunities. Individuals fall into the trap of analysis by paralysis. They gather more and more data, create more and more spreadsheets, have more and more meetings, but they never pull the trigger. The endless analysis is not a genuine search for truth. It is a psychological defense mechanism, a way to postpone the terrifying moment of making a decision and being accountable for its outcome. They are waiting for certainty, waiting for the all-clear signal from the crowd. But in the world of business and investing, certainty only arrives after the opportunity has vanished. The path of the 99% is a path of risk avoidance, but it is a tragic irony. In their desperate attempt to avoid the risk of looking foolish in the short term, they guarantee the certainty of mediocrity in the long term. The financial connection here is the very concept of alpha. In investment terminology, beta is the return you get from simply owning the market, like an index fund. Alpha is the excess return, the return above and beyond the market average. It is the holy grail of active investment management. By definition, you cannot generate alpha by doing what everyone else is doing. If you own the same stocks as everyone else, you will get the same returns as everyone else. You will get the beta. To beat the market, you must think differently from the market. You must have a variant perception. You must believe something that the majority of investors do not, and you must be right. This is the direct financial payoff of having the courage of your conviction. The American Express investment was pure alpha. The market, the crowd, believed the stock was worth $35. Buffett, based on his Inner Scorecard analysis, believed it was worth much more. The gap between those two beliefs was the source of his extraordinary return. This principle applies far beyond the stock market. In entrepreneurship, every great breakthrough company was built on a contrarian premise. When FedEx was founded, everyone believed the U.S. Postal Service was the only way to deliver packages. When Airbnb started, everyone believed it was insane to let strangers sleep in your home. These founders had a conviction that went against the prevailing wisdom. Their alpha was the entire value of the new market they created. Therefore, the ability to cultivate and act on a contrarian conviction, which is only possible if you live by an inner scorecard, is the engine of all outsized financial success. Those who live by the outer scorecard are destined to earn beta returns, both in their portfolios and in their lives. They will get the average, the consensus result. Those with the courage to occasionally stand apart from the crowd, armed with rigorous analysis and a strong internal compass, are the ones who have a chance to capture the alpha. It is the financial reward for psychological resilience. When you build your life on a foundation of authenticity, reject the noise of the crowd, and act with the courage of your convictions, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to build an asset that is far more valuable than any stock or bond. This asset doesn't appear on a balance sheet, but it underpins all long-term success. This is the fourth pillar, the compounding of character. The understanding that integrity is not just a moral virtue, but a powerful financial asset that, like capital, compounds over time, creating a moat of trust that is nearly impossible for competitors to replicate. In the summer of 1991, Warren Buffett faced the greatest crisis of his career, a test that would threaten not just his fortune, but the very stability of the U.S. financial system. The crisis was at Salomon Brothers, the powerful Wall Street investment bank, where Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway was the largest shareholder. Salomon was caught in a massive scandal. Its head of government bond trading had been submitting false bids in U.S. Treasury auctions to corner the market, a blatant violation of federal law. When the scandal broke, Salomon was on the brink of a corporate death sentence. The U.S. Treasury, its single most important counterparty, was preparing to ban the firm from bidding in its auctions, which would have triggered a run on the bank and led to its collapse overnight. The Outer Scorecard was an unmitigated disaster. The firm's name was toxic, its integrity shattered. In this moment of sheer panic, the board of Salomon Brothers made a desperate call to Omaha. They asked Warren Buffett to step in as interim CEO to save the firm. Buffett understood the stakes. He didn't want the job, but he knew that a collapse of Salomon could trigger a global financial crisis. He agreed, flew to New York, and immediately faced a congressional hearing. His testimony before Congress is a masterclass in the inner scorecard. He didn't quibble or make excuses. He didn't blame rogue employees. He took full, unconditional responsibility. And then he uttered the line that would become the creed for his entire approach to business and life. He told the committee and the world his new rule for every employee at Salomon: lose money for the firm, and I will be understanding. Lose a shred of reputation for the firm, and I will be ruthless. In that one sentence, he drew a crystal-clear line. Financial capital was replaceable. Reputational capital was not. The only reason the U.S. government, the regulators, and the financial markets gave Salomon a second chance was because of one man, Warren Buffett. His personal reputation, the character he had spent over 40 years meticulously building, was the only asset strong enough to act as a bridge of trust over the chasm of the scandal. He was, in effect, pledging his own personal inner scorecard as collateral for the entire firm. He spent months cleaning house, installing new systems of compliance, and rebuilding the culture around this principle of absolute integrity. He saved the firm, not with a clever financial maneuver, but with the sheer force of his compounded character. It was the ultimate proof that reputation is not a soft, fuzzy concept. It is the bedrock asset that makes all other business possible. The strategic logic behind Buffett's ruthless focus on reputation can be brilliantly explained by game theory, specifically the concept of the iterated prisoner's dilemma. The classic prisoner's dilemma is a one-shot game. Two partners in crime are arrested and held in separate cells. The prosecutor offers each the same deal. If you betray your partner and they stay silent, you go free and they get 10 years. If you both betray each other, you both get 5 years. If you both stay silent, you both get 1 year. In a single-play game, the rational choice is always to betray. No matter what the other person does, you get a better outcome by betraying them. But life and business are not a single-play game. They are an asterisk iterated times game. You are going to be dealing with the same people, your employees, your customers, your suppliers, your regulators, over and over again for decades. In an iterated game, the entire dynamic changes. The optimal strategy is no longer to betray, but to cooperate. The winning strategy, as discovered in computer simulations run by political scientist Robert Axelrod, is a simple one called tit for tat. It starts by cooperating, and then it simply mirrors the other player's previous move. If they cooperate, you continue to cooperate. If they betray you, you betray them back in the next round. But you are willing to cooperate again if they change their behavior. A reputation for integrity, living by an inner scorecard, is the most effective way to signal to everyone that you are a cooperator in the great, iterated game of business. You are signaling that you can be trusted to not seek a short-term advantage at their expense. This reputation for trustworthiness is incredibly valuable. It means people want to play the game with you. It leads to better deal flow, because people bring their best ideas to people they trust. It leads to better partnerships, built on a handshake, rather than a 100-page legal document. It gives you the benefit of the doubt when things go wrong. Someone with a reputation for cheating might be able to win once, but soon they will find that no one is willing to play the game with them anymore. Their short-term victory leads to long-term isolation. Buffett's famous line, "We can afford to lose money, even a lot of money, but we can't afford to lose reputation. Even a shred of reputation," is not a moral pronouncement. It is a profoundly strategic statement. It is the wisdom of a master who understands that the ultimate key to winning the long game is to build a character so strong and a reputation so clear that the best players all want you on their team. To embed this principle into our own lives and careers, we can use a mental model called the circle of competence and character. This is a visual tool for making decisions that honor both your skills and your values. First, draw a large circle on a piece of paper. Inside this circle, write down the industries, skills, and domains that you understand with deep, genuine expertise. This is your circle of competence, a concept Buffett uses to define where he is qualified to invest. It might include software engineering, digital marketing, or managing retail operations. Be honest and conservative. The key is to know what you know and to know what you don't know. Second, on the very border of that circle, you are going to define your character boundaries. These are the non-negotiable ethical lines derived from your personal constitution. Write them right on the perimeter of the circle. These are your ruthless rules. For example, I will not work with people I do not trust, no matter how much money is involved. I will not sell a product or service that I would not be happy for my own family to use. I will not cut corners on quality to save a few dollars. I will not overpromise and underdeliver. These boundaries are the fence that protects your reputation. Third, you create the litmus test for opportunities. Every new job offer, business venture, investment, or partnership that comes your way must now pass a two-part test. Question 1. Is this opportunity squarely inside my circle of competence? If the answer is no, you pass. It may be a wonderful opportunity, but it's for someone else. Question 2. Does this opportunity require me to step over, or even get close to, my character boundaries? If the answer is yes, you pass, immediately, and without negotiation. No amount of financial upside can justify compromising your integrity. Finally, when evaluating potential partners, use Buffett's ultimate character test. Ask yourself, is this the kind of person I would be happy to have my son or daughter marry? This simple, visceral question cuts through all the noise of resumes, track records, and financial projections. It gets to the heart of the matter. Is this person of high character? Do I trust them implicitly? Will they act with integrity when the pressure is on? By operationalizing your decisions through the circle of competence and character, you create a powerful filtering system. It ensures that you are not only making smart decisions based on your skills, but that you are also making wise decisions that compound your most valuable asset, your reputation. The antithesis to this patient, character-driven approach is the seductive and ultimately destructive mindset of growth at all costs. This is the philosophy that dominates so much of the modern business world, from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. It is the outer scorecard on steroids. The only thing that matters is the metric: quarterly earnings, daily active users, stock price appreciation, the internal culture, the long-term health of the company, and the integrity of its practices are all secondary to the relentless pursuit of making the numbers go up. The landscape of business history is littered with the corpses of companies that fell into this trap. Enron optimized for reported earnings, creating a complex web of lies and fraudulent accounting that led to its spectacular collapse. Wells Fargo, under immense pressure to cross-sell products, created millions of fake accounts, shattering the trust of its customers and incurring billions in fines. The "move fast and break things" mantra of early Facebook, while fueling rapid growth, led to massive scandals over user privacy and the spread of misinformation, causing lasting damage to its reputation. In each case, the leaders were making a fatal trade. They were sacrificing the intangible long-term asset of reputation for the tangible short-term gain of a better quarterly report. They were listening to the outer scorecard of Wall Street analysts and venture capitalists, while ignoring the rotting foundation of their own internal culture. The problem with the growth at all costs mindset is that it creates a slippery slope. It starts with a small ethical compromise, a tiny shortcut to make the numbers. But when that is rewarded, it sets a new precedent. The next quarter, a slightly larger compromise is needed. Over time, the entire culture becomes warped. The inner scorecard of doing the right thing is replaced by the outer scorecard of hitting the target no matter what. The collapse, when it comes, always seems sudden to the outside world, but it is the inevitable result of 1,000 small, corrupting decisions made over many years. It is the final, brutal invoice for a debt incurred against the company's character, an invoice that can bankrupt even the most profitable of enterprises. The direct financial connection of compounded character is both defensive and offensive. Defensively, a strong reputation acts as a massive insurance policy. As we saw with the Salomon Brothers scandal, the deep reservoir of trust in Warren Buffett's character was the only asset that could save the firm from annihilation. It provided a margin of safety that was purely intangible but worth billions of dollars. When a company with a poor reputation faces a crisis, it gets no benefit of the doubt. Customers flee, regulators impose the harshest penalties, and the stock price collapses. A company with a strong reputation is given time to fix the problem. This reputational capital is a very real, albeit invisible, asset. Offensively, a stellar reputation creates enormous financial value. It leads directly to a lower cost of capital. Banks and lenders are more willing to provide financing at favorable rates to a business or individual known for their integrity. It dramatically lowers customer acquisition costs. A business built on trust and word of mouth, like the countless small businesses Buffett admires, doesn't need to spend a fortune on marketing because their loyal customers do the marketing for them. Most importantly, it attracts and retains A-player talent. The most skilled and ethical people want to work for leaders and organizations they admire. This creates a virtuous cycle. High-character leadership attracts high-character employees, who do great work, which further enhances the company's reputation, which in turn attracts even more great talent and loyal customers. You can see this financial impact when you look at the valuation multiples of companies. Businesses with powerful, trusted brands built over decades of consistent, ethical behavior, are consistently awarded higher price-to-earnings ratios by the market. The market is implicitly acknowledging that their reputation is a durable competitive advantage, a moat that protects their future earnings. Character, therefore, is not a line item on a spreadsheet, but it is reflected in every single number. It is the silent, compounding force that creates resilient, long-term, and sustainable financial value. We arrive now at the final pillar, the ultimate destination of this entire philosophy. We have built a foundation of authenticity, learned to reject the noise of the crowd, found the courage to act on our convictions, and understood the power of compounding character. But to what end? The final promise of the Inner Scorecard is not just about accumulating wealth or achieving professional success. It is about unlocking the ultimate freedom, the freedom to define and measure a life well lived on your own terms. It is about achieving a state of genuine, durable happiness and fulfillment, completely independent of the world's applause. There is no more powerful illustration of this than Warren Buffett's decision, along with Bill and Melinda Gates, to create the Giving Pledge. In 2006, Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, pledged to give away more than 99% of his fortune to philanthropic causes. This decision is completely incomprehensible from the perspective of the Outer Scorecard. The goal of the Outer Scorecard is to die with the highest possible score, the biggest net worth. It is a game of endless accumulation. Buffett's decision was a radical rejection of that entire game. His Inner Scorecard told him that his true skill was not in making money, but in allocating capital. He saw his fortune not as a metric of his success, but as a pile of claim checks on society's resources. And he decided that the most rational and most fulfilling use of those claim checks was to redeploy them to solve humanity's biggest problems, like disease and poverty. He was taking his ultimate skill, capital allocation, and applying it to a scorecard of human betterment, not personal enrichment. This is mirrored in his famously frugal lifestyle. He still lives in the same house in Omaha he bought in 1958 for $31,000. He drinks Coca-Cola and eats at McDonald's. He doesn't own a yacht or a collection of fancy cars. This isn't because he's cheap. It's because he is utterly indifferent to the outer scorecard of wealth display. Those things simply do not register on his inner scorecard of a life well lived. His scorecard is about other things: the intellectual challenge of running Berkshire Hathaway, the joy of teaching, the love for his family, and the satisfaction of using his immense resources to help others. He has engineered his life to maximize his own happiness and fulfillment, based on his own unique definition of what that means. The Giving Pledge and his simple lifestyle are the ultimate expressions of the Inner Scorecard. They are the actions of a man who is so secure in his own self-worth that he needs zero validation from the outside world. He is playing his own game, by his own rules, for his own reasons. That is the ultimate freedom. The psychological science behind this state of being is best captured by self-determination theory, developed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. After decades of research, they concluded that human well-being and motivation are not primarily driven by external rewards like money or fame. Instead, they depend on the satisfaction of three innate, universal psychological needs. The first is autonomy, the need to feel in control of your own life and to act in harmony with your own sense of self. The second is donatime brodis, the need to feel effective, to master challenges, and to develop your skills. The third is relatedness, the need to feel connected to others, to care for and be cared for by those around you. Now, map these three needs onto the philosophy of the Inner Scorecard. The entire practice of building an Inner Scorecard is an exercise in cultivating autonomy. It's the act of declaring that you are the author of your own life's script. The pursuit of mastery within your circle of competence directly feeds the need for competence. You are measuring yourself against your own potential for excellence, not against some arbitrary external benchmark. And the focus on character and integrity as the basis for all relationships directly fuels the need for relatedness. You build deep, authentic connections based on trust, not superficial ones based on status or utility. The Outer Scorecard, conversely, is a poison to all three of these fundamental needs. It destroys autonomy by making you a slave to the opinions of others. It undermines competence by trapping you in a cycle of social comparison, where there is always someone richer, smarter, or more successful to make you feel inadequate. And it corrodes relatedness by encouraging you to see people as objects, as rungs on a ladder, or as an audience for your performance. Self-determination theory provides the scientific validation for what Buffett has known through intuition and experience. A life dedicated to chasing external validation is a life that will be perpetually unsatisfying because it starves the very psychological needs that create genuine happiness. A life lived by an inner scorecard is a life that naturally and sustainably leads to deep fulfillment because it is a life designed to nourish the soul. To translate this grand idea into daily life, we can adopt a final mental model, the time billionaire framework. This concept reframes our most valuable asset. A financial billionaire has $1 billion. A time billionaire has 1 billion seconds left to live, which is roughly 31 years. If you are young, you are far wealthier in the only currency that truly matters than a 90-year-old financial billionaire. This framework shifts your entire perspective on success and wealth. The goal is no longer just to accumulate money, it's to use money to buy back your time and autonomy. Step 1 is to calculate your time wealth. Acknowledge and internalize that your remaining seconds are your most precious, non-renewable resource. This creates a sense of urgency and clarity. Step 2 is to conduct a freedom audit. Make a list of all your major commitments, possessions, and even relationships. For each item on the list, ask a simple question: does this increase or decrease my autonomy and my time wealth? That high-paying but soul-crushing job might look good on a financial statement, but in a freedom audit, it's a massive liability. That expensive car with the huge monthly payment isn't an asset. It's a ball and chain that forces you to keep running on the hamster wheel. You begin to see your life not in terms of what you have, but in terms of how free you are. Step 3 is to design your rich life. This concept, popularized by author Ramit Sethi, is about defining what wealth is for you. Forget the magazine covers. What does a genuinely rich life look like on a random Tuesday? Is it having 3 unscheduled hours to read a book? Is it being able to take a walk with your kids in the middle of the afternoon? Is it having the mental space to work on a creative project without financial pressure? Get incredibly specific. This detailed vision of your ideal day becomes the new metric for your inner scorecard of fulfillment. Step 4 is to use money as a tool to buy back your time. Once you know what your rich life looks like, every financial decision can be filtered through that lens. Instead of asking, "What will this purchase get me?" you ask, "How much freedom will this purchase buy me?" Maybe it's paying for a cleaning service to free up your Saturdays. Maybe it's choosing a job that pays 20% less but has a 50% shorter commute. You start to see money not as an end in itself, but as a means to an end. And that end is a life of autonomy, designed according to your own unique blueprint. This framework is the ultimate practical application of the Inner Scorecard. It's about consciously and deliberately using your financial resources to build a life that is rich in what truly matters: time, freedom, and fulfillment. The antithesis of this freedom is a state that afflicts millions of outwardly successful people: the golden handcuffs. This is the predicament of the highly paid professional, the lawyer, the banker, the doctor, who is miserable in their career but feels trapped. They are living a life that looks spectacular on the Outer Scorecard. They have the prestigious job title, the 7-figure income, the beautiful house in the expensive neighborhood, the luxury cars, the kids in private school, and the country club membership. They are the very picture of success. But on the inside, on their inner scorecard, they are failing. They hate the long hours, the high-pressure environment, the toxic politics. They feel their work lacks meaning. They feel like a cog in a machine, with no sense of autonomy. They dream of quitting, of starting their own business, of becoming a teacher, of doing something, anything, else. But they can't. Each symbol of their success has become a link in a chain. The huge mortgage, the car payments, the tuition fees, the lifestyle expectations of their social circle. These are the golden handcuffs. They have built a life that costs so much to maintain that they cannot afford to walk away from the very job that is making them miserable. They have traded their freedom for status symbols. They won the game of the Outer Scorecard, only to realize that it has imprisoned them. This is the ultimate trap. It is the tragic endpoint of a life lived in pursuit of external validation. The person in the golden handcuffs has accumulated a vast amount of financial wealth, but they have a profound poverty of time and autonomy. They serve as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that if you don't define success for yourself, the world will be more than happy to define it for you, and it will send you the bill for the rest of your life. The final, direct financial connection is perhaps the most important of all. A life of fulfillment, driven by an inner scorecard, is not some soft benefit that is separate from financial success. It is a direct contributor to it. A person who is genuinely engaged, motivated, and happy in their work, a person who has aligned their career with their inner scorecard, is more creative, more resilient, more productive, and a better leader. They are playing the long game because they enjoy the process. They are not burning out, because their work is a source of energy, not a drain on it. This sustainable, high-performance state naturally leads to better long-term financial outcomes. Burnout, on the other hand, the inevitable result of the golden handcuffs, is financially catastrophic. It leads to poor decision-making, costly health problems, and career flameouts. Furthermore, by defining what is enough, by having an inner scorecard that values time and autonomy over endless accumulation, you gain a massive strategic advantage. You are immune to the more trap that keeps even billionaires feeling poor. You have the freedom to walk away from bad deals, toxic work environments, and unethical partners. You have the power to say no. This ability to say no is the ultimate form of financial leverage. It allows you to wait for the perfect pitch, to invest only in things you truly believe in, and to structure your life in a way that maximizes both your wealth and your well-being. The inner scorecard, therefore, doesn't just help you make money. It gives you the wisdom to use that money to build a life of genuine lasting wealth, a life of freedom, purpose, and profound fulfillment. That is the final and most important return on integrity. You have just spent this time investing in yourself, acquiring a powerful mental tool that can fundamentally reshape how you see the world. You now possess the blueprint for the Inner Scorecard, Warren Buffett's operating system for navigating a noisy, distracting world. You understand how to build a foundation of authenticity, how to reject the siren song of the crowd, how to act with the courage of your convictions, how to compound character into a strategic asset, and how to define a life of ultimate freedom and fulfillment. This is not just a philosophy, it is a shield against the anxiety of the modern age and a compass for a life of purpose. But it is crucial to understand that Buffett's system of thought is not a single, isolated idea. It is a network of interconnected mental models, a latticework of wisdom where each concept supports and strengthens the others. The Inner Scorecard is the powerful engine that tells you who you should be and why you should act. It sets your direction. It gives you the psychological fortitude to stand apart. It is the source of your conviction. However, once you have that conviction, once you've decided to walk a different path, you are faced with a new set of questions. How do you analyze the path ahead? How do you assess the opportunities that your independent mindset now allows you to see? What specific tools do you use to evaluate a business or an investment to separate a true opportunity from a trap? The Inner Scorecard is your compass, but you still need a map. The video that is now on your screen is that next piece of the map. It is the bridge between the current compass, why, and the for what. It is the link that connects the philosophy of the Inner Scorecard to the practical, hard-edged tools of decision-making that Buffett uses to build his fortune. You have made the decision to stop living by the world's rules and start living by your own. That is the most important step. The question now is how far you are willing to take this journey. The choice to continue is not about watching another video. It is a declaration. It's a statement that you are not just interested in the theory of success, but that you are committed to mastering the complete arsenal of tools required to achieve it. You have calibrated your compass. Are you ready to learn how to read the map? The next piece is waiting for you.